Hello everyone and welcome back to the Plutonium Show. So, this weekend, which I hope you had a good one, by the way, we had the Jeff Bezos-Lauren Sanchez union take place. It's something that I haven't really been paying attention to, but you just can't help but learn about it. It's just one of those things, everyone's talking about it. I saw photos of the fashion, and for a bunch of billionaires, for a bunch of 1%ers, I really wasn't impressed. You think their billions or their millions would have been able to put them in much nicer garb, but I suppose that's not the case. And I'm no fashionista, so I'm not normally snooty about these things, but some of those dresses, the Kardashians looked ridiculous. Oprah Winfrey, my goodness. But anywho, this isn't a fashion channel. What I did notice, other than the atrocious fashion, was the backlash, the disgust that people expressed towards the wedding. Now, I'm not one who gets mad at rich people unless they actually do something wrong and harm people or pretend that they're better than us simply because they've got the moolah and that they deserve more. We'll get to that because this definitely happened in Venice over the weekend. Speaking of that, the Venetians were not happy. They were protesting, so much so that one of the venues for one of the parties that they had to be moved, had to be relocated to avoid any more, clashing with protesters. But there was a lot of backlash, and I found myself wondering why. Was it purely because we don't like, as humans collectively, show-offs? Some people maybe in the minority were jealous and wished that they had billions at their disposal to, I suppose, have such a spectacle. I don't know. Speaking of the word spectacle, I do wonder if anyone would have been bothered by the excesses of these 1%ers had they not been shoved down our throats. Now, again, I have to say, I wasn't bothered until I learned something, but we're going to get to that something. First of all, the whole display shoved in your face thing. This Jeff Bezos and 1%er club obviously isn't something new. It's not a result of capitalism per se. I mean, Jeff Bezos' wealth is a result of it. However, the notion, the entire general concept of humans always trying to establish a hierarchy, even though we don't naturally have one. Money is an artificial construct. It's not a natural endowment. It's not something that just exists like we do or like oxygen does. We made it. And so we made it and we're using it to establish that artificial hierarchy. I'm better than you. Even without money. Some people, especially in the past, used our skin color, how light you are and how dark you are, to establish your place in the system. We know the Aryans did it with their caste system. And so humans just have this proclivity, this need almost, to establish ourselves in that way. We don't all feel that way. I certainly know I don't, and I'm sure people who are attracted to this channel don't feel the same as well. But it's a human condition. So back in the day, let's go back to, let's say, the 18th century in France, which is when the French Revolution eventually took place. There was no social media. There was no television. There were no radios. If you weren't in the club, chances are you were never privy to the privilege. And if you were just a mere peasant, as, for example, I am today, then I'd just be minding my own business, trying to keep food on the table, probably trying to stay alive and stay healthy, while the rich were not taxed and had their extravagant parties and what have you. The problem is the rich, rather than doing it behind the scenes, in the privacy of their own homes or their flashy hotels today, they like to show off. another human issue, another human condition, which we are not all afflicted with. And so when they show off, us peasants, is it us peasants or we peasants? Whatever it is, we start to notice. We start to notice the discrepancy, and we start to think, that's a lot of accumulated wealth and privilege up there in the 1%. Meanwhile, I'm living in dirt. Not literally, but back in the day, in 18th century Paris, a lot of people were literally living in dirt. And thus, you get the French Revolution and other revolutions throughout history. Now, I'm not trying to be a revolutionary here, although my inner revolutionary did start brandishing her fist when I came across what the Bezos clan did, specifically in relation to a hotel. But in general, live and let live. Just don't harm people. And, in my books, you're okay. Especially with people like Jeff Bezos. I'm assuming he built his wealth. I'm starting to think the older I get and the more my eyes are open to the world, that nepotism is almost always, it's invariably in most cases the starting point, even if it's not entirely obvious to begin with. But in Jeff Bezos' case, let's assume he completely built his empire from scratch. So who are we to judge how he spends his money? It's not like back in the day, let's say in the 18th century in France, it was just the nobility, the aristocracy. They didn't earn their keep. It was just luck. And a lot of the time, exploitation of the 99%. For example, by taxing them exorbitant rates and not taxing the rich, who can more than certainly afford it. But that's not what we're looking at here, right? So Jeff Bezos, you worked for it. He spent, apparently this cost around $50 million US, approximately, because we don't know the exact number. According to a story an article by USA Today, there are estimates that have been provided by Venice regional governor, Luca Zaia. And the estimates are, as I just said, between $46.5 to $55.6 million. All right. It's the man's money, right? Some people might not like that. Some people might think that is an obscene accumulation of wealth. But my position is, who are we to dictate how someone spends his money? Now, I'm no fan of Jeff Bezos. I know exactly how I don't know exactly, but I know about the stories that emanate from Amazon employees. And the working conditions leave a lot to be desired. Some would say they're flagrant abuses of human rights in terms of no bathroom breaks and the need to stay on the road so you can make your deliveries on time because you've given your customers unrealistic delivery dates. I'm going off on a tangent here. My point being, yes, he might be a terrible person, but how he spends his money in my books is his business. Now we get to what I suppose contributed to my ire in relation to this topic. There are guests, according to an exclusive report by Page 6, not the most reliable, granted. Guests were allegedly booted from the Venice hotel that Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez stayed at, even though they had bookings sometimes months in advance. So they apparently bought out the whole place. They rented out the entire place to stay. And it's this hotel here, the Amman Venice, I think is how you pronounce it. And they caused chaos in the lobbies. Just everyone was being asked if they were actually staying at the hotel. And then here an insider said that guests who had previously booked at the hotel for Wednesday night a long time in advance were booted once Bezos rented the entire space a few months ago. The source said that those guests are being moved to other hotels, including the St. Regis, and that Amman is paying for their rooms in addition to comping a night of their stay and offering upgrades. But people were still understandably not happy. Not to mention the employees who were, again, allegedly overheard complaining, I suppose, about how they were being overworked already in preparation for the 1%ers. Who remembers, right in the lead up to Harry and Meghan's nuptials, how homeless people were being cleaned? Those were the words being used by reports at the time. And I was a kid at university and I wasn't even paying attention to Meghan and Harry. But I remember how there was talk about homeless people being cleaned as though they were trash off the streets of Windsor in preparation for this wedding. And don't even get me started on how much worse Meghan and Harry's wedding is, because at least Jeff Bezos actually paid for his wedding and isn't making a show of how this was a spectacle for the world. Not that I like the spectacle they're engaging in. Some in the media have described it as vulgar, actually, the vulgarity of showing off. And this article, which I'm going off in a bit of a tangent here, but this article, which I don't entirely agree with because the author just veered off into politics. But back to the homeland of Australia, the Sydney Morning Herald, the author of this article says the publicity is the point, and the transparent vulgarity is even more the point. And the reason that they actually do all of this is because they know they have an audience. Us. But back to the point I was trying to make. So Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez are not pretending they did this just for the spectacle. Clearly they enjoyed themselves and they had friends and I'm supposing family over, unlike Meghan. Whereas we know with Meghan and Harry, they love to say that, oh, that was all for you. I mean, you paid for it. We benefit off of it, but it was for you. We didn't want it. We got a fake secret wedding that never actually happened 3 days prior. Also, by the way, Lauren and Jeff actually did get married in some kind of a quiet private ceremony a week prior to the celebrations. It's this whole concept of we have money and we are inherently better than our fellow human beings who are so unfortunate that they have to live off the streets. We don't care. Clean up the trash, or in Jeff Bezos' case, clear out the rooms, clear the trash out of the rooms, because I decided to drop millions. And shame on the hotel for agreeing to this. Because as far as I'm aware, I mean, I know you can pre-book and pay at the property. So maybe some of these bookings were canceled and they were never paid for. But what I'm understanding from this article is people were removed. People were told, you can't stay here. We're going to physically move you. And then they had to pack their things. So they were literally there. These guests who paid for these rooms with their hard-earned money, this is not a hotel that is affordable by any stretch of the imagination. I hear it's around $2,000 a night to stay in. And yet these people were not good enough. They were deemed not good enough by hotel staff and management, because that's really where the blame lies. That's why people like Jeff Bezos can get away with this behavior, because hotels like this hotel, the Aman, bow down to their demands, because, they've got dollar signs in their eyes. And it's not like these guests were staying there for free. So shame on this hotel, which, I couldn't even boycott if I wanted to, because I can't afford, $2,000 a night? Ay. But shame on this hotel for allowing this behavior. But I am actually curious, what is it that stokes or sparks your ire when it comes to these displays? Was it just the fact, that these are rich people? Is it the vulgarity, the show? They got paparazzi. If they didn't call the paparazzi, we probably would have seen, people on the streets with their iPhones, but they can be private. I read that they got this hotel because it has a whole wing that gives famous patrons privacy. So they have their ways. The rich and famous, they have their ways of maintaining their privacy if they were interested in it. But no one at this wedding, absolutely zero people who showed up at this wedding had any interest in privacy whatsoever. They knew exactly what they were getting themselves into. They knew they were going to get photographed. In fact, they were counting on it. And so every photo you see, the photos of them on the yacht having their foam party. How do we know about it? They're on a yacht because they called the paparazzi. They want to show it off. So is that what gets to you personally? It doesn't get to me. That's not enough for me because I'm still, you're not hurting anyone. Have your fun, show off if that's what gives you life. I mean, it's a human affliction. As I said earlier, it's not something that's restricted to the rich or the 1%. Some people just feel like they're not seen and that things are not worth it unless they're showing off. I don't know what that psychology is. I don't know what went wrong in their childhood to make them feel that way, but c'est la vie. Now, if unlike the Bezos and Kardashians and whatnots of the world, you do value your privacy, I would highly recommend you check out Incogni, which is a company that provides you with quite a necessary service, I am sad to say, in today's world. I've previously shared a personal anecdote about how I realized my private data had obviously been bought and sold by data brokers. My email was inundated with spam. Someone from, no offense to Indians, but this was literally just, it happened in India. Someone in India was using my email to make random purchases, not my money, but my email. And so these things happen. So what Incogni does, and I use Incogni, that incident that happened to me is what got me onto Incogni, is they clean up your data off the internet. They actually contact these data brokers and these people and these organizations who have your information, and they get them to scrub it off the internet. And because it's a subscription, it's done on an ongoing basis. So if you're interested in such a service, then do check out the link in the description box to get 60% off an annual plan. And if you'd like to share, they even offer a friends and family plan. So yeah, what are you waiting for? Go check it out. Ever since the Sentebale issue with Dr. Sophie Chandauka took place, I believe in April, earlier this year, I've been conducting regular checks on their finances because I'm personally interested, as I said in my video, in finding out in the 1 year, was it 1 year? I think it's less than 1 year, that Dr. Sophie was in charge. I wanted to see if the concerns coming from Harry's side, all those trustees who quit, were actually valid. Was she actually wasting money? Was she actually leading the charity to hemorrhage money because of her own selfish machinations? And I'm starting to have a bit of concerns, not the right word, but I'm starting to wonder now. I'm starting to wonder because I was curious as to what the deadline was. When was the deadline for Sentebale's filings? If you look at previous filings, they seem to have made them between April and June. Now their financial year ends on the 31st of August of 2023. And as per my readings of the charity, is it the Charity Commission? Yes, the Charity Commission in the UK. These organizations get to pick their end of financial date, the end of their financial year. It's not something dictated. It's not the calendar financial year. And so Sentebale's happens to be the 31st of August of every year. Now, the deadline, as stipulated, is within 10 months of the end of an organization's financial year. So they give you an example. If your financial year ends on the 31st of December, then your deadline is the 31st of October the following year. In which case, the deadline for Sentebale's filings is today. If I'm doing the math right. Today, the end of June, the final day, the 30th of June. And as of yet, nothing has been filed. Is that because things are under investigation? Perhaps they get some kind of a freeze or an extension because of that. It's suspicious. Now we know that the Sussex Squad is quite intense and is basically a terrorist organization. So it's no surprise that pretty much a couple of months ago by now, actually no, this was published this month, June. We have heard, at least I've heard, that Sentebale has been silently shutting down its social media accounts. Not necessarily literally shutting them down, but making them go on private, disabling comments. And the reason was explained in a statement that was posted by Sentebale on X, and I believe also on Instagram, where they said, unfortunately, we have had to temporarily disable comments on this platform due to the harmful effects of recent targeted online harassment. Our focus remains on our mission and the communities we serve. We will not engage with misinformation or personal attacks here. And then they thank everyone who continues to support the organization. Now, of course, this is unacceptable if true, and I have no reason to doubt its veracity. However, we're going to go through some comments after this topic, and so we can flesh that out further. I'll just bookmark that. Another piece of, I suppose, concerning information, though, has surfaced within the last month or so. Since a new board of trustees were appointed by Dr. Chandauka after this debacle, which happened in March this year, 2 trustees have already stepped down. So they got on here. If we look at the Sentebale information, if we look at trustees, we see that there are only 3 and that they were all appointed, the new ones, on the 25th of March. So Narissa Naidu, who was appointed on the 25th, as I said, stepped down from her role on the 14th of April, under a month. A spokesperson for the charity, for Sentebale, told civil society this is a particularly difficult time to have joined the organization, given the unexpected, sustained, and intrusive press and social media attention. She has chosen to step down out of respect for her other professional commitments, which we fully understand, respect, and support. And the first trustee who quit was Margaret Ngozi, and she stepped down on the 2nd of April. So just a week, basically. I don't know how much to save for the member comments. Maybe I should actually end this segment here and move on to the comments, because yes, this could be true in the sense that the media attention was the reason. But at the same time, playing devil's advocate and not taking sides, you can start to wonder whether there are some issues brewing up within Sentebale, especially at the leadership level, which has made working there so untenable that someone literally quit within a week. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know. I'm just raising these alarm bells because when I first decided to make my video on Sentebale, I made it after Sophie's interview because I thought she presented well. I still didn't know anything about her, but I thought she presented well, and I heard things from her point of view. Before that, it was this he said, she said in the press, and I found it so childish. Even Sophie's responses, her statements, I just found them so childish, and I kept telling myself, oh my gosh, get yourselves off the media. You know, you're basically cut from the same cloth, fighting it out in public like this. It's embarrassing. Get yourselves together. But as I said, then I watched the interview and I sort of had a bit of a change of heart regarding Sophie, and I warmed up to her. In the months, in the subsequent months, with no financial statements being filed, with people quitting, we just have more questions than answers, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. Now, because this is all connected to comments, we might as well move on to that segment. So I went back to my Sentebale video called The Whistleblower, which I believe was released early April. And I pulled out a couple of comments just to illustrate that even as far back as then, some people were not buying Sophie's story. I would like to just clarify that I wanted to present both sides in that video, more so Sophie's, because she was the one who gave the interview. And we already knew in a nutshell what Harry and his side were saying, which was that Sophie was basically the bad guy, quote unquote bad guy in this scenario. And she's a tyrant, and it was her way or the highway. And so people quit. We all know her side: bullying, harassment, misogyny noir, etc., etc. Ironically, exactly what Meghan and Harry have been accusing the world at large of. So even if she's lying, Even if she's exaggerating, at least they're getting a taste of their own medicine. But Conservative Savage said, I don't care about resumes, because I had basically presented Sophie's resume, and I suppose also the trustee who was sitting next to her. His name eludes me at this point, but quite an impressive man himself. And I do this because I want to give the audience a clear picture of the expertise and experience of these people, especially when they have, for instance, been running or participating in charities for decades, and they're not problematic, or for years in Chandauka's case. Then, you know, it gets your wheels moving. Okay, she's been on the board of Sentebale for 6 years prior, before she quit and came back, and there were no issues. That's why I gave that information. It's, to me, pertinent background information. So if there were no issues back then, why would she suddenly be problematic now? What changed? In any case, back to the comment. I don't care about resumes. I don't trust any of them. Fair point. We shouldn't trust any of them. We don't know them. The fact is, this woman, Dr. Sophie Chandauka, supports BLM, and that alone makes me question of what she interprets as racism. She's woke, and that makes her problematic. Having said that, I wouldn't doubt there was bullying at least. Harry is problematic in his own ways and certainly can't be trusted. So I think the truth is they probably all hold some blame in all that has happened. And I'm starting to lean towards that myself, because there are always two sides to a story. And perhaps in this instance, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Why should we completely throw our weight, in support of Sophie? I'm not saying she's lying. I don't want people to think I'm turning against her. I was really never on her side. I just said part of what she said is plausible. It plays into Meghan and Harry's playbook, especially the whole, if you don't do things my way, if you don't defend my wife, then you're enemy number one. You are persona non grata, and I'm going to do everything in my power to smear you, which is basically what Meghan and Harry did. Excuse me, I don't know what that was. When the royal family refused to protect her from the press coverage she was receiving. They went and pulled an Oprah. But in general, I would agree. What if, why not both versions be true? Why can't it be that both of these individuals are problematic? The next comment from this video was from Nurse Kate. And she said, I have a hard time believing that Harry has the balls to say anything racist to this woman. I'm not sure about that, especially when you consider how racist he's been in his past. You could say it was from ignorance, but I'm tired of that excuse or justification. The Nazi uniform and the racial slurs he would use against fellow soldiers who hailed from Pakistan, I believe. It doesn't look like he's lacking the balls in that department. I think it's not necessarily the guts that he needs to say these things. It's just his stupidity, his ignorance that makes him say them. He's married to a woman who leads him by the short hairs, and she completely controls every aspect of his life. I have a hard time believing that a board with black members who are men would tolerate anything racist being said as well. She wants to bring Sentebale donors to come from Africa and keep it local, but they aren't going to get much money unless she reaches out to other royals such as Sweden, Spain, etc. That being said, yes, Harry is an ass. Yes, his wife is a horrible person. But the whole racist, misogynistic language is played out. Just say it. You don't like Harry, the charity is losing money, and you want to control it. And that's why I'm highlighting these comments, because they are not calling Sophie a liar just flat out, but they're doing what we should all be doing, which is questioning the information out there. Why should we believe what someone says without evidence to back them up? And that's what I was hoping Sophie would produce. That's what I said back in April. I said, I don't know what evidence she has. Perhaps she has something that we're not privy to. And I also didn't expect her to put it out in the public, by the way. And I don't know if we're ever going to know the answer. But because today was the deadline for filing their financials, I just thought, you know what? I'm starting to have questions. Not that I didn't initially. I didn't buy Sophie's story. I just felt that it was important to listen to both of them. And of the two of them, we know Harry and Meghan have a terrible track record. But that doesn't mean that Sophie is automatically an angel. And so I am interested in knowing what you all think about this. I was hoping to look at the financials because they would tell us the story. They would tell us whether the concerns of the trustees who quit were, arrived at on some factual basis. That's all I'm saying. Don't get the mob at me. I am not calling Sophie a liar, but we should question. Just because we don't like Meghan and Harry, that should not cloud our judgment when it comes to matters such as this one. Because who's losing out here at the end? It's the beneficiaries, the youth, the people that Sentebale is meant to be helping. It's not Harry and Meghan, and it's not Sophie. They're both rich. They're both privileged. They'll be fine, regardless of what happens. If Sophie steps down, she'll be fine. She's the head of some other company, and she's working at Meta, and she's absolutely fine. Don't you worry about her. And we know Harry is a spoiled, rotten Nepo prince, and he'll be fine too. But all this is only going to end up backfiring, if it hasn't already, on the people who Sentebale, or that Sentebale was established to help. I think that's all I have time for today. Very interested to hear your feedback on the topics raised, and keep the comments coming so that we will get them featured. If ever there is a video with no member comments or no comments that will spur a discussion, obviously, as I did today, by the way, for Sentebale, I will respond to and feature and highlight comments from non-members. I mean, your subscribers at the end of the day. I just prioritize members naturally because they're being very generous with their time and their finances in supporting this channel. So members come first, but it's not like the rest of you are going to be ignored. Thank you so much for tuning in. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say, and hope you have a great and productive and safe, healthy week ahead of you. Until next time.